If there's one saving grace to being the worst team in the NFL, it's the fact that you get the number 1 overall pick in the following season's draft. But what happens when you're truly the worst team in the league, but you somehow don't finish with the worst record? Well, then it sucks to be you. Today we're counting down the 10 worst teams since the 1970 merger who didn't get the first pick in the draft. And as we always do, we will be using C-score to make these determinations. A deeper explanation of C-score is available in the description of this video down below. Certain teams will not be eligible for this list. One of those teams is the 1976 Seattle Seahawks. Yes, they were terrible, but the Buccaneers in the same season were worse, so Seattle losing out on the first pick is justified. We saw the same thing take place in 1990. The Browns were awful that season, but the Patriots were more awful. 2009 and 2012 see the same thing happening, with the Rams picking first ahead of the Lions, and the Chiefs picking first ahead of the Jaguars. A team that earned the first pick but didn't make the pick due to a trade won't count here either. The 1973 Houston Oilers traded the first pick in the 1974 draft to the Dallas Cowboys, but had otherwise earned it. We go back to 1990 again, where the New England Patriots didn't keep their first pick either, also trading it to the Cowboys. One last category here. The 1975 New Orleans Saints would have picked first in the 1976 draft, but they were bumped down due to the arrival of the Bucks and Seahawks as expansion teams, and it was the Bucks who got to pick first. The 1998 Eagles ran into the same problem, being left to pick behind the expansion/rebirth of the Cleveland Browns. With all that out of the way, we have 10 bad and simultaneously unlucky teams to count down here. Thank you so much for joining us. We are ready to roll. At number 10 are the 2014 Tennessee Titans, who finished the season at 2-14 while regularly getting blown away, being outscored by 182 points on the season. Their C-score of negative 29.618 was the worst in the league that season, but their record only tied for the worst, and they lost out on the first pick in 2015 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Looking for their first winning season in 3 years and their first playoff appearance in 6 years, the 2014 Titans won their first game of the season before going 1-14 the rest of the way, including a 10-game losing streak to end the season, with 6 of those losses coming by multiple possessions. With only 2 teams scoring fewer points than them, they targeted a quarterback with their second pick, taking Marcus Mariota out of Oregon. The Bucks did likewise, taking Florida State's Jameis Winston. Although Winston did make a Pro Bowl, it's hard to argue that either team was happy with their pick, as both players moved on after 5 seasons without a second contract. We revisit an old friend of C-score at number 9 with the Indianapolis Colts, specifically the 1993 team. The 4-12 Colts carried a negative 189 point differential, along with a 29.995 C-score, both the worst marks in the league. But their 4-12 record was short of the 3-13 Bengals, giving Indy the second pick in 1994. The 92 Colts had a deceptive bounce-back season from a historically bad 1991 season, but they were back to their losing ways in 93. Despite a 2-1 start to the year, they found wins hard to come by. 3 of their 4 wins were by exact 9-6 scores, leaving them inclined to draft offense in 1994. When the Bengals took D-tackle Dan Wilkinson of Ohio State at number 1 overall, the Colts had their pick of offensive players, going with San Diego State running back Marshall Faulk. While Wilkinson had a fine career and is sometimes unfairly tagged as a draft bust, Faulk was a first-ballot Hall of Famer and an all-time great at his position, but he only played 5 seasons with the Colts before getting traded. Sometimes teams win when they shouldn't, and those fraudulent records can cost them. Here at number 8 are the 2003 Arizona Cardinals, 4-12, despite finishing last in both points scored and points allowed, and despite finishing well behind everyone else in C-score at negative 31.231. 4 teams tied with a 4-12 record, landing the Cards the third pick in 2004 behind the San Diego Chargers at first. Arizona snuck out a 4-4 home record in 2003, including a dramatic come-from-behind win over the Vikings to end the season that knocked Minnesota out of playoff contention. Their 0-8 road record told the story of this team, though, with 13 points being the closest of those 8 losses. The 04 draft is pretty famous because almost all football analysts focus on a single position like total simpletons. The first pick of the Chargers, quarterback Eli Manning, was traded to the New York Giants. And while the Giants certainly enjoyed more team success than the Cardinals, Arizona landed the best player in this draft in Pittsburgh wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, despite waiting until number 3 to draft him. We move forward just a few seasons with the 2007 St. Louis Rams at number 7. Not much good to be said about the Rams teams of this era. 3-13, minus 175 point differential, and a negative 31.63 C-scores. The Miami Dolphins were only 4th worst in C-score this season, but their 1-15 record gave them the first pick in 2008, while the Rams settled for pick number 2. The 07 season was truly the beginning of the end for the Rams in St. Louis. This 3-13 record would be the best record they would have for another 3 seasons. An 0-8 start to the season and an 0-4 end saw a 3-1 run wedged between the two, with one of those wins even being by multiple possessions. Picking first, the Miami Dolphins selected Michigan tackle Jake Long. Picking second, the Rams selected Virginia defensive end Chris Long, unrelated to Jake, but son of Hall of Famer Howie Long. Chris had a longer career and won 2 Super Bowls away from the Rams. Jake Long was a Hall of Famer in waiting after his first 4 seasons, only to see his career undone by injuries. Hard to say who came out ahead in this one. Our number 6 entrant, the 2000 Cleveland Browns, somehow stumbled their way to 3 victories while getting stomped the rest of the way to the tune of 13 losses, an astonishing negative 258 point differential, and a near negative 37 C-score. The San Diego Chargers, the greatest 1-15 team in NFL history, locked up the first pick in 2001, with the Browns falling to 3rd behind the Cardinals. In the second season of their rebirth, the Browns actually took a step backward, especially offensively. In their 16 games, only 5 times did they score more than 10 points. That included 6 games where they failed to score a touchdown, and 4 games where they failed to score any points at all. They may have looked to draft on offense, but quarterback Michael Vick of Virginia Tech and O-lineman Leonard Davis of Texas went first and second. Cleveland then took Florida defensive tackle Gerard Warren third, who was okay, but a lesser player overall than the 2 who went before him. It's the next 3 picks, multiple-time All-Pro Justin Smith, and Hall of Famers LaDainian Tomlinson and Richard Seymour that really hurt. We saw the 07 Rams at number 7, and now we get the 08 Rams here at number 5. Another terrible team at 2-14 with a negative 233 point differential. The Rams suffered the misfortune of being in the same season as the winless Lions, who still managed a better C-score of negative 33.865 to the Rams' negative 36.77. The 09 draft went Detroit 1, St. Louis 2. Coming out of their bye week at 0-4, the Rams came out blazing with a 2-game winning streak. Of course, they finished the season on a 10-game losing streak, including 4 losses by 20-plus points, giving them 7 such losses on the season. But, like we said, the Lions, playing a much harder schedule than the Rams, couldn't find their way to any wins, and they clinched the first overall pick, leaving the Rams to pick second for the second straight season. The Lions took Georgia quarterback Matthew Stafford at number 1, who, while overrated, is by leaps and bounds better than Baylor tackle Jason Smith, who lasted only 3 seasons in St. Louis. Let's go back in time to 1972, where the very bad Philadelphia Eagles land here at number 4. At 2-11-1, they were outscored by more than 200 points in a 14-game schedule, while compiling a negative 36.833 C-score. Yet, the Houston Oilers were 1-13, securing them the first pick in 1973 and giving Philly the third pick. It's not just that the Eagles only won 2 games this season, it's that they won both of them by a single point each, including against those same Oilers. On top of that, their tie was against the equally terrible Saints, allowing New Orleans the second pick. The Oilers took Tampa defensive end John Matuzak number 1, a colorful player and individual, but ultimately not all that successful at football, despite riding along for 2 Super Bowl victories with the Raiders. Waiting until the third pick, the Eagles got the much better end of the deal, taking Texas offensive tackle Jerry Sizemore, a 12-year veteran, a 2-time Pro Bowler, and a member of the Eagles Hall of Fame. Another old friend of C-Score at number 3 are the 2000 Arizona Cardinals, the single worst product the Cardinals have put on the football field in the Super Bowl era. At 3-13 with a negative 233 point differential, their minus 37.438 C-score was the worst in the league. But just like our number 6 entrant, the Cleveland Browns, they too finished behind the 1-15 San Diego Chargers, and were left with only the second pick in 2001. The Cardinals actually beat the Browns in 2000, and their other 2 victories came by a single point at home against their division rivals at the time, the Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. The rest of the season saw loss after loss compiling on top of each other, including a 41-point loss on the road against those same Cowboys. 4 other losses by at least 20 points tell the story of this season, resulting in the midseason firing of head coach Vince Tobin. As mentioned earlier, the Cardinals took Leonard Davis with the second pick, who had a darn good career, but that was mostly with, you guessed it, the Cowboys. Against first overall pick Michael Vick, the Cardinals take the L on this one. It's the Colts again, coming in at number 2 with the 1981 squad. Still playing in Baltimore, they carried what was likely the worst defense in the entire Super Bowl era, if not in all of NFL history. They were 2-14 and were outscored by 274 points. But their 2 wins opened and closed the season against the ridiculously unlucky New England Patriots, leaving them both at 2-14 and slotting the Colts into the second pick of the 1982 draft. That is indeed a true story. The Colts beat the Patriots by 1 point in New England to start the season 1-0. After a 14-game losing streak, they then beat the Patriots by 2 points at home. In between, they were outscored by almost 20 points per game, with only 2 of those losses by a single possession. With that first pick, the Patriots selected much ballyhooed Texas defensive end Kenneth Sims. He was solid in 8 seasons with the Patriots, but far from spectacular. Mississippi State linebacker Johnny Cooks went second to Baltimore, and although he too was far from spectacular, he had a longer and more effective career overall, even winning Super Bowl 25 with the Giants. Here come the Patriots again, taking our number 1 overall spot with our second entry from the 1972 season. Even a 3-11 record is flattering to this team, getting outscored by 254 points and dropping a negative 42.022 C-score. But they fell all the way to the 4th pick behind the aforementioned Oilers, Saints, and Eagles. 1-point victories have turned into quite the theme in this countdown. New England won in weeks 2 and 3 by exactly 1 point each to sit seemingly comfortable at 2-1. But of course they went 1-10 the rest of their way, with their 1 victory coming over the Saints. This did indeed push the Patriots down the draft picking order. Now it's time for the great irony to all of this. Despite ranking first on this list, the Patriots were left with the worst draft pick compared to the other 9 teams. Yet they came away with the best player out of anyone else we've mentioned to this point. With the 4th pick, the Patriots took Alabama guard John Hannah, a Hall of Famer, the greatest guard in NFL history, and in the very short conversation for greatest offensive lineman period in NFL history. The top 10 as a whole doesn't see a whole lot of big jumps in C-score, with the biggest coming in between numbers 7 and 6, and again between numbers 2 and 1. In fact, less than a full point separates the Browns at number 6 from the Cardinals at number 3. 3 different franchises, the Colts, Cardinals, and Rams, appear here twice, and 2 different seasons, 2000 and 1972, also appear twice. In total, 5 teams were better off in their later position, with 3 worse off and 2 somewhat undetermined. Although Marshall Faulk and Larry Fitzgerald put up a good argument, it's worth noting that the worst team here, the 72 Patriots, got the worst draft slot at number 4, yet drafted the best player in John Hannah. In case you didn't know, the NFL draft is quite the crapshoot. Thank you so much for joining us today and for staying as long as you have. I love the NFL draft. Like, for real, I can sit down and watch the entire thing, not just the first round. So getting to tie a C-score list to the draft was a lot of fun for me, and it's something I will look to do again soon. Please give the video a like and some shares, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and ding the bell for notifications on all future videos. Was there anything here that jumped out at you? Was there maybe another team you expected to show up on this list? Or maybe do you disagree with my evaluations on who got the better end of their draft picks? Maybe you think Marshall Faulk and or Larry Fitzgerald are indeed a better overall player than John Hannah. I will admit all these player evaluations are subjective on my part. Sound off on that or anything else you may have on your mind down in the comments section below. Thank you again for joining us, and until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.